Hello boys and girls, it's wonderful to see you again. This is Lauren Grace from the Rainforest Art Project, and we just received another letter, and this one is from Leslie Benson from Nova Scotia, Canada. Can't wait to hear what she has to say. Let's take a look. Dear Rainforest Art Project, my name is Leslie Benson and I am from the small town of Dingwall in Nova Scotia. I'm 12 years old and I live with my mother and grandparents near the ocean. Because it's very cold and windy in the winter months, we try to spend as much time as possible outside in the summer. My favourite outing is when we build a fire on the beach and invite our family and friends to eat clams, lobsters and corn on the cob. We cook them in big pots right on the fire. And after we eat, we sit around and tell stories. This is my favourite story that my grandmother shared with us around the campfire about Mr. Osprey and Little Tree. There is a little tree that stands on a hilltop near our town, and on the top of Little Tree is a large nest where Mr. Osprey lives. It gets very windy on top of Dingwall Hill, and all the animals in the area live in the nearby valley. They used to think that Mr. Osprey was very strange for living alone on the rocky hilltop, but he loved it there. From his nest in Little Tree, he had a fabulous view of the ocean and he loved to feel the fresh wind blowing over his feathers. In fact, living on top of Dingwall Hill was almost perfect, except it was very lonely. Little Tree was smaller than the valley trees and had twisted limbs and not nearly as many leaves. To be honest, the birds and animals felt that Little Tree was ugly, and they never came to visit. Many years ago, as the birds and animals were preparing for the winter in their comfortable nests and caves, the wind began to blow and the rains began to fall. These storms usually go away after a couple of days, but it just kept getting worse and worse. The birds and animals in the valley had never seen anything like this before, and they became very frightened. Just when they thought that it could not get any worse, the stream that flowed through the valley began to rise. The rain just kept coming and the water began flooding the trees and the wind started ripping off their branches. It had become too windy to fly, so the birds and the animals were terrified as they jumped from the trees and climbed to higher ground. Then, when they began thinking that all hope was lost, they heard a familiar voice calling to them through the thunder, wind and rain. It was Mr. Osprey, who had come to help them. "Follow me," he called out, and all of them began climbing up the hill. Finally, just ahead of them and standing strong and proud was Little Tree. They all climbed onto her sturdy branches and held on for their lives. When the storm finally passed, they found themselves shivering and shaking, but they had all survived. Then the sun returned, and there was joy and celebration on the top of Dingwall Hill. Mr. Osprey and Little Tree were so happy to have visitors, and the birds and animals thanked them for saving their lives. The birds and animals returned to their valley, but from that time on, they became best friends with Mr. Osprey and Little Tree, visiting them every chance they had. And when they had children, they told them about the terrible storm and how they all owe their lives to their friends, Mr. Osprey and Little Tree. I hope you enjoyed reading my story. Sincerely, Leslie. Thank you, Leslie. That was a wonderful story. And now it's time for some interesting facts about the osprey. Osprey are large fish-eating birds and are found on every continent in the world except Antarctica. They mate for life and usually remain alone if their partner dies. They are always found near rivers, lakes or oceans where they can find food. They have excellent vision and very sharp talons to grab the fish out of the water. Osprey is the favourite bird for Nova Scotia. I look forward to our next adventure. Changing the world, one piece of art at a time.